Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Today I have a really exciting interview with Lewis Clarke from TT Combat. So Lewis, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for welcoming me to the channel.
You're
Good to be here.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So today we are going to have a little chat with Lewis and have a chat about kind of his role within TT Combat, and more specifically Carnivale, which is a game we chatted about recently on some of our live streams. It was certainly in our kind of games under £40 video, and I think there's quite a bit we can delve into about that one. So Lewis, I guess the best place to start is with yourself. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and about how you started with TT Combat and what you do there?
Yeah, so I'm head of design here at TT Combat. I say here at TT Combat. This is my house. I'm at home today, working from home. I'm head of design. We've got a small team, design team at TT Combat. We've got about a dozen people all told, including artists and sculptors and web designer and MDF designers and things like that. I started with the company, 4 years ago, I think it is now. Yeah. I was hired as a laser operator for our laser cutters, sort of part-time laser operator, part-time MDF designer. And I got brought in. I got 1 day into that, and then I got the general manager come up to me and said, "You've got a graphic design degree, haven't you?" I was like, "Yeah, I do." And he's like, "Do you know how to use all these programs?" I was like, "Yes, I do." And he went, "Great. We've got the game Rumble Slam. We kickstarted it about a year and a half ago, and we don't know what to do." Basically, they got to a point where they got the rules, their miniatures were getting made and things, but they didn't know any graphic design stuff. They're a very small, much smaller company at the time, so they didn't have a graphic designer on staff. So they said, "Well, can you come up and have a look and do some cards and do the rule book and do the packaging and all that sort of stuff?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I went up and sort of just took over. Really, I looked at it and I got given sort of Word documents and Excel documents with stats and rules scattered everywhere, and I was like, right, I'm going to combine all this into a legible format. And once I started reading through and learn how to play the game and stuff, I was like, what if we did this, and what if we add this, and what if we change that rule to this rule? Because that's the kind of person I am, annoyingly. And yeah, ended up sort of low-key taking over the project from there on. And for the graciousness of the people behind it, they were like, "Yeah, that's good, do what you need to do." And I was like, great. And so I worked on Rumble Slam until we got that out. And then after that, no one really told me what to do. So I just carried on doing what I was doing. And yeah, here we are 4 years later or so. And yeah, head of design. So I got promoted from that. And now I'm sort of overall manager of the 4 games: Carnivale, Rumble Slam, Drop Fleet Commander, Drop Zone Commander, and also the MDF design, and a few other things as well, things like Fancy Heroes and stuff like that.
Amazing. That's the joys of kind of working in a smaller company as well, isn't it? You can carve out those kind of those career progressions quite
absolutely
nicely.
We get the company I work for, TT Combat, we're partnered with Troll Trader, and they're our sister company. And we all work in this colossal warehouse. So half the warehouse is secondhand Warhammer, secondhand Magic cards, things like that. And then the other half of the warehouse is TT Combat design, resin production, MDF cutting, all of that sort of stuff. And quite a lot of the other departments get really mad at me because someone will go to work in a department. And so we had our ex-web designer, Chris. He started off in the assembly department, sort of putting the miniatures together to send out to people. Me and him got chatting one day when we were out there together, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I've got a lot of web design experience." I was like, "Cool, you can come with me there." So it's this the great thing about working in a small company is that you get people from all sorts, and you just get to poach them and get to go up through the corporate ladder, I guess it is.
So whereabouts are you based? Is it Cornwall? Am I right in that?
Yeah,
is that where you are?
Yeah, down in Cornwall in the southwest. We're a little bit away from the touristy areas. By necessity, really. But yeah, we've still got out the back door. We've got beaches and loveliness. I think we're the only miniatures game company in Cornwall, and I think the closest that we've got nearby is Foreground, who do MDF scenery as well. Who are up in, I think the last time they were up in Somerset. But yeah, basically as resin production goes, I think it's just us down here. So we're a bit out of the way, but the views make up for it.
I was going to say everyone's a little bit out of the way compared to me. So I'm up in the northeast, obviously northeast of England, not too far from the Scottish border in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, I think Cornwall's probably a little bit out of my beaten path. I wouldn't kind of stumble across you, put it that way. You were just saying there as well about you've obviously got your own resin production as well, and sort of how long has the resin production, did it come in around the Rumble Slam time, or was it there before, or has it changed?
Yeah, so a funny story about when I started work. When I went for my interview, the entire warehouse was one floor, and they're just about building a second floor. And they showed me up, and they just got the floor down. And there was one guy sat over on the far side of this massive empty warehouse, sat on a little stool on his own, going, "Oh yeah, hi, I'm a mold maker." And I was like, "Oh, hi." And I got the job and came back 2 weeks later, and there was an entire department there. So it just changed literally in 2 weeks. So it was about that time they started doing resin production. I got told the story of when Rumblestand was successful, they debated how they were going to do it, if they could send it off to other people, whether it was all going to be 3D printed models, because even sort of 4 years ago, that was the kind of thing that was a dream, that you could 3D print models for things. And now entire Kickstarters are doing it. And yeah, they end up deciding that this would be a good time. They got the investment, they got the money for the Kickstarter, they could invest into this resin production facility in Cornwall. And it's just grown from there, really. We had one game at the time, and now there's 4. So yeah, the team's quite a lot bigger. We're in a completely different part of the warehouse now. We've got a whole floor to ourselves and stuff. So yeah, it's quite extreme.
I guess it's kind of it's a blessing and a curse, isn't it? It's nice to have control of your own sort of manufacturing, but you've also got control of your own manufacturing. So
yeah, we're going through it. It's been for a little while. It's like every 6 months we put in a new system in place that manages for those 6 months, and then demand skyrockets, and then we have to put in a new system. So at the moment we're in the middle of going through this new production system, which fingers crossed should last us several years. Which we changed around the entire resin department, changed around the pouring department, the assembly department. It's one of the reasons that at the moment, unfortunately, there's a fair few things out of stock on the TT Combat website, because we're sort of shifting from a small company mentality to a large production mentality kind of thing. So instead of making small batches of everything, if it's run out of stock, we're now leaving it until we can make 500 of it at a time. And it means that anyone that once it's in stock, anyone who wants it is going to be able to get it forever, because we'll make that many, and when it gets down to a lower number, we'll make that many again. But at the moment, it's teething troubles with that at the moment. So it is, like I say, it's a blessing and a curse, because it means we get everything in house. And like we sent some models through to production the other day, and the art got done. The art got done about 2 days. And then our freelance sculptor managed to sculpt it within about 3 days. And then the production cast were on my desk 2 weeks later, which is madness. Like if anyone knows much about sort of resin and plastic production and things, it tends to be a much longer process. But that was quite an extreme example of what happened. But it means you can do that every now and again when you need to push it through. Yeah,
I guess it's one of those things as well. Is that, I mean, you kind of have to walk before you can run, and you're right. Kind of like that scale up takes time, and it takes resources, and it takes effort. But I think as long as people understand that if something's out of stock, but there's a plan behind it, and this is what you're doing, kind of thing. It's not a case of, every time I look, something's out of stock. Is there something going wrong? Is there something I need to be worried about? Should I not get into this game, kind of thing? Knowing that there's a really good reason behind this, and it's because it's part of sort of longer term expansion and good plans. That really
absolutely
helps.
There's one character for Rumblestand, Pinyama, who's a llama pinata who you hit and candy comes out. Which is wildly popular, which we didn't know it was going to be that popular. We made it and we're like, this is so stupid, only we're going to like this. But incredibly popular character, and it got to stay. So we released it earlier this year, I think it was, and we had sort of a few dozen in stock at a time, and they'd sell out within sort of minutes of going up on the store. That was the time we're like, we have to reassess how we're doing this. So yeah, now it's good. I say we got a few teething troubles, but in the next sort of few weeks and months, I think we're going to sort of iron it all out, and then we'll be set for, I say, fingers crossed, the next few years.
Yeah, I remember the character you're talking about there, the model you're talking about. I remember seeing in the glass cabinet at UK Games Expo this year, and I took a picture and kind of shared it and stuff. And the amount of comments I got on that picture of all the ones I took over the weekend was amazing. So I can understand why it sells out fast.
It's a good example of the sort of resin changes, because we took some to Games Expo, and we take quite a lot of stock at the time, and we only had a smaller stand this year, so we had limited numbers. But I think we had about 10 of them, thinking, it's going to be a smaller crowd and whatever. And I think it was within the first 3 hours, people kept on seeing the cabinet. We'd sold out of them. And then for the rest of the weekend, we'd be like, we want that man at Miniature. I'm like, I don't have it, but we can order it for you. We have some more in the warehouse. It's just, not any here.
Wow. I do want to talk about Carnivale, but we've briefly just mentioned about the kind of the stand that you have at UK Gaming Expo. I've been to a lot of different kind of events and expos and stuff that TT Combat attend, and I want to kind of ask you about that now, because I'm always impressed with the size of the stand that you have and the amount of stock that you carry there. It must just be, especially bearing in mind where you're based, it must be a mammoth task to get everything up to wherever that event is. But you've got to kind of give me a background to it.
Yeah, we sort of we're able to take as much as we've got people that can drive vans up there. That's kind of the standard we go. How many people can go? How many vans do we need? And how full can we pack them? Basically, yeah, it's quite a logistical nightmare getting it all up there. We have to leave quite a lot earlier in the morning than most people on the stands. Yeah, we get there and everyone's like, yeah, we've been driving for an hour and a half to get here. And we're like, yeah, we left at 5 a.m. Wow. Yeah, it's quite a lot. But yeah, this year, like I say, we had about half the stand that we usually do, and it's still absolutely packed. But it was good. It was great to get back into it again, because it's been over a year since we've had a show.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
I at the show I was panicking a little bit to start with, because first of all, this is our first show in ages. Where is everything? Yeah. And then this is the first show since COVID here. Are we all safe? Have we all got our shots? Have we all got our vaccine passports? How's the mask situation? All of that. And they handled it really well. And then we got there, and after the first day was up, I was like, oh yeah, this is what a show is like. Now I've lost my voice. Like, cause shouting over a mask as well.
Yeah, that's
every single show. Yeah, I completely forgot what it was like. It was like, it's the first day I was like, yeah, I'm exhausted and I can't speak. This is great. This is really, really good again.
I must admit, kind of walking through the door on the first day there, and as you kind of walked in, you guys were just off to the right-hand side as you walked through the front door, and it was a case of like, I saw the big stand, I saw all the kind of MDF terrain, it was like, oh yeah, I'm back at the events again now. Once I see your big stand kind of thing, it's like, yeah, I'm back again, it's all right, everything's all right. So yeah, it was nice to see.
I was going to say, we're hoping that our next events, we're going to have sort of bigger stands next year, so we can take some of the really ridiculous things that we've got in the warehouse. So we've got things like the for Drop Fleet, we've got the Avenger, which is this it's a Drop Fleet ship made at drop zone scale, and it's meters long. It's huge. And for the past little while, I've been working on, just transitioning into Carnivale, I've been working on the Rialto Bridge itself in MDF, making that, and it's 4 foot long at current standing. And I'm hoping that the next year we can bust that out and take that to a show. I'm not sure what stage of production it's going to be at that stage, because I've made one now, and it went together okay, but there was a few tweaks to be made to take it to a show, because everything you make for a show has got to be as robust as possible.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So I'm on design number 3, I think, of that at this point. So I'm hoping that we can get that cut and assembled so we can take it to the next show.
Oh, I look forward to seeing that one then. But yeah, at UK Games Expo, it was I got a chance to have a demo of Carnivale, which is kind of I've always known about Carnivale, and I remember there was a Kickstarter a while ago. Was it back 2017? I think it was. But I never had the opportunity to give it a try, and this was the first time I demoed it and really enjoyed it. And it was a game that thematically really kind of came across and was the right balance between a miniatures game and an RPG, I would suggest. Like, I think I've not really kind of encountered a game that was that open, but not that complicated, if you like. So I think this is a great opportunity to kind of to have a chat with you and let hear it from the horse's mouth, really, hear about sort of you, give us a little bit of background into the game and what it's all about.
Yeah, so it's a game. It was originally designed by a company called Vesperon, by a guy called David Esbury, who came up with the world and came up with this idea of it. And we bought the game off him. I say we, TT Combat bought the game just before I started with the company. And they decided that they were going to make a new version of it, because when they bought it from him, it was originally all metal models, and they bought the molds, but they've been run to death. And so you could cast them again, but you get sort of like characters without faces and stuff. It was hitting the point where I was like, we can either invest quite a lot of money and time into remaking these metal molds, or we can make something new out of it. And because they just got in this new resin department, that was the perfect time to transition the whole range into resin. So every single character got redesigned, and then got put to this Kickstarter. And that's where I sort of jumped in on the thing, really. So I was focusing on RumbleSlam at that point, and when the Kickstarter came along, I said, okay, I've got some ideas for what we can do with this. Because as far as rules go, it was the first version was very much, if there's a line and 2 points of it are miniatures game and then role-playing game, the first version was sort of down near the role-playing game side. and we wanted to push it a bit further up to the miniature side, because one of the issues that we found playing the first edition of the game was that you spend most of your game looking in the rulebook to see what happens. And it was the kind of thing that every single action you could do had a particular like state for success and failure and fumbles and criticals. There's a little table there which shows every single one. And if you wanted to walk, there was a table for it. If you wanted to run, there was a table for it. If you wanted to climb or run along the walls or jump up or jump down. And that was one of the things that were like, this is cool that we can tell this story of what character's doing, but you're spending most of the time reading how to do it. So that was sort of the thing that I came in on and said, look, we can do this a different way by removing 90% of the actions in the game, basically. So I came up to the design team at the time and said, look, I've made this rule set for the game in my own time. And what do you think? If you like it, it's yours. If you don't like it, we'll go a different direction. And they liked it, which was nice. We needed a fair amount of playtesting since like after that. But that's when I sort of like really got into the game. And yeah, like I say, we ended up taking the whole mantra of the new edition was getting everyone's noses out of the book and onto the table. So like, for example, I think there was sort of half a dozen different actions for moving before. Like I said, there was walking and sprinting and climbing and like all of that sort of stuff. And now we've just got one, which does everything. So you can move, and if you want to turn your movement into a vertical movement, then you roll a dice and you can see if you can do that. And vertical movement includes climbing up or climbing down, running along a wall, things like that. So it's basically, you can do the same number of things as you used to. It's just on the players to emphasize what those actions thematically are. So we changed it from, like I say, the near to the RPG side of it to about halfway down. And we call it a narrative miniatures game because it's all about telling a story, but also playing the game on the tabletop as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's sort of the intro to where the game came from, I guess. Yeah.
Could you give us a little bit of information about the kind of the background of the game? Because it's one of the I quite like kind of like a game with a kind of a narrative. I can build the stories in my head, and when I'm playing the game, I can kind of see where it fits into the world and stuff. And I would say that my understanding of Carnivale is that it certainly has that. So do you want to give us some kind of background?
Yeah, of course. Like I say, as a narrative miniatures game, the narrative's forefront. The game's set in 1795 in Venice, and 2 years earlier, a great rent tore open the sky, which sank most of Europe beneath the waves. Almost all of Italy was destroyed. Volcanoes erupted. Everyone knows their history. 1795, everyone knows what happened. So through the rent in the sky poured these, magic came through and sort of became a thing that exists. And also these creatures called the Rashar, which are kind of Lovecraftian-esque sort of horrors from beyond the veil. And they've come through kind of secretly, and throughout all of this destruction and flooding, Venice was the one place that survived almost unscathed. For plot reasons, that there is a it's the lowest, one of the lowest cities to the sea. You'd thought it would sink, but yeah, there's plot reasons to why it survived, which I'm not going to spoil. It's all in the rulebook. After 2 years from the rent in the sky, we sort of pick up Carnivale as it is now. We've got 7 different factions vying for control of the city. There's the Rashar, who we talked about, the Lovecraftian sort of ones. In the 2-player sets that we've got, they face off against the Guild, and the Guild are sort of the army of the people, I guess, but they're kind of like the mafia, but a bit worse. If you pay your tithe to the Guild, you'll probably be fine, but if you don't, you'll get a knock on the door and you'll be called out to fight, or you'll be found face down at the Canal in the morning. They're not nice, but they're sort of all the people have got. Because fighting against the Guild are quite a lot of patricians. The patricians are the ruling class, and they're kind of like they're complete psychopaths, basically. Once the rent in the sky opened, there's no more night in Venice anymore. It's all twilight forever. So no one really gets any sleep. And when the light of the rent pours down, it kind of inflicts this madness upon people. And patricians are really susceptible to it because as rich people in Venice, they could pretty much do whatever they wanted. And they've decided what they want to do is go out at night and murder people. And who's going to stop them? Because the city guard are on the side and in their pocket. We've also got the Doctors of the Hospital. The Doctors, they have a separate island where they, I'm going to say heal people, but probably that isn't the right word, because what they really do is abduct people, torture them until they're mad, and then they've realized there's a link between madness and magic. So they torture them until they're mad and then extract the madness into magic and steal it from them. And they perform all sorts of horrific experiments that most of the citizens don't know about. Most of the citizens are just like, oh, there's these cool doctors that go around and help us. But for everyone that goes into the doctor's clinic, like maybe 1 in 10 gets rent sickness and has to be taken out separately and dealt with. So those are four factions. The fifth faction is the Vatican. And when the Rent in the Sky opened, the Vatican itself was sunk. It was the epicenter of the entire cataclysm. Again, for plot reasons that I won't go too much into, you can read yourself. But basically, the new pope that was elected is the one who opened the Rent in the Sky. And he knows it, but he doesn't want anyone else to know it. And he doesn't want anyone else to know that magic is this ancient evil. He's decided that it's actually a gift from God, that God has chosen him to sort of bestow upon the world. So he sent the Vatican forces into Venice to sort of quash any sort of misgivings about that. While most of Carnivale is all sort of secret societies upon secret societies, the Vatican are very much different to that. They've just gone in and gone, no, we're an army and we're going to do what we want. And the rest of Venice will be like, no, I don't think you know how a republic works. And then our sixth main faction is the Strigoi. The Strigoi are a vampire faction. They're led by Vlad Dracula, who has been reincarnated. In the story of Carnivale, Vlad was the first person to sort of peer beyond the Rent in the Sky, but sort of hundreds of years before it opened, he sort of saw this other world and was gifted with these powers, which manifest as sort of vampirism. The Strigoi are the very epitome of you are what you eat. The more they drink the blood of a certain type of person, the more they become like that type of person. So they have some Strigoi who go in and just drink the blood of nobles, and they gain their manners and their mannerisms and their memories, and they can sort of perfectly infiltrate within society. But then you get some of the vampires who Vlad's like, no, you go and eat some of the Rashar and see what happens. And they turn into them. And Vlad does not care about his subjects at all. They're just cattle to him. He sort of just goes, you eat that and I'll see what happens. And if it's good, I'll have a go. And then our last faction is called the Gifted. And the Gifted are our mercenary faction. So when the Rent in the Sky opened, magic was bestowed on people, but the few gifted sort of develop these innate magical powers. And I'm not going to say they're like the super friends because they're not really friendly with each other, but they're sort of this mercenary faction of magical people who can do different things. So you have characters like White Dove, who can fly and can blast people with magical like beams from her hands. And then you've got the Commedia dell'arte, who a touring troupe of actors who, the longer they live under the Rent in the Sky, the more they turn into their character types that they're portraying. And like, for anyone that knows the Commedia dell'arte in historical terms, they weren't nice people in the plays. They were sort of basically all sociopaths. And so the more they're there, the more they turn into their characters, and it's a bit weird. So that's all 7 of our factions. The rulebook covers all of the story about them. There's chapters upon chapters of each of them. We wrote the rulebook with Gav Thorpe, industry legend Gav Thorpe.
Yeah.
Who I got to go and meet, and him and I wrote the book together, which was amazing. Sort of a childhood dream come true. And yeah, the rulebook goes into all of that, and we've also got in there's campaigns that you can play for all of the different factions as well. So we've got sort of generic scenarios that you can play. One of the key things in Carnivale is the scenarios. In the core rulebook, I think there's 45 different scenarios that you can play. So it's not a simple game. Like the gameplay is easy, but every time you play it, it's different. And there's campaigns for each of the factions showing what they've been up to basically at that time.
Yeah, one of the things that certainly came across when I had a chat with I forget the guy's name now who did the demo, but he did a very good job. I forget who it was, but he was he obviously explained some of this background stuff, and then we played through a demo. And the thing that definitely came across when we played it was one of those games where just whatever you want to do, you can figure out a way you want to do it type thing. So you want to jump from that building and land on that person. Well, yeah, that's we'll use that stat kind of thing. And it was a game that allowed you to have those very cinematic sort of play experience without the rules getting in the way. And like you say, rather than having sort of 25 different tables to consult to kind of decide, it's not an exercise in rules; it's an exercise in game, and I think it was just a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the demo.
It's not just a game that sort of has those moments in there. We actively encourage people to do that. The first rule in the rulebook, the golden rule of Carnivale, is if it's cool, let your opponent do it. So if your opponent wants to do something, if your opponent goes, I kind of fancy jumping across here, shooting you on the way, landing, tucking and rolling, and then jumping on the other person. And I didn't. I rolled my dice, and I was sort of half an inch away. It's just like, yeah, sounds cool, do it. Because the next turn, you're probably going to want to do something cool as well, and you want them to accept it as well.
Oh, honestly, it's fab. I think a lot of kind of games have almost kind of drifted over into that. It's about the competition and it's about the kind of the me versus you and one of us must win kind of thing. And it was really fun to just play something that was about, hang on, it doesn't really matter who wins here. This is we're playing out a story. And like you say, with all of the different scenarios in the book as well, you could play a different one every week and sort of take about a year to get around them, I suppose, and the amount that's in there.
So some of the scenarios as well are deliberately asymmetric.
Yeah.
So if you're playing a scenario where, narratively speaking, the Rashar are probably going to win, then the Rashar's winning conditions are probably going to be easier than their opponent's winning conditions. And it's not about who wins and loses, it's about telling that story. And if your opponent, even with those weighted winning conditions, managed to win, then you're like, okay, you did pretty well done. Like you deserve that victory. Whereas if the Rashar win when the scenario is weighted towards them, you're like, yeah, but was it really about you?
I think one thing I should mention as well is obviously you've got 2 starter boxes available for Carnivale, which personally feel like the perfect place to start, unsurprisingly. They are the same factions in the starter boxes, but different models. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. I don't think there's any crossover between the two. So if you buy, we've got the smaller starter set came out last year. It's called Escape from San Canciano. I think in your review of it was five kits under £40, wasn't it? 5 starters under £40. Yeah, it is fantastic value. It's £35 for it. But I think you can get it cheap from like Goblin Gaming and things. And it's the Guild versus Rashar. It's perfect if you think, this game sounds all right, let's give it a go. The small rulebook's in there, which contains all the rules you need to play, just not all of the extensive like sort of background lore that you might be interested in. So if you want to dip your toe in the Canal, then you can get that box and it's great. But then if you really click with it, the bigger 2-player set has the full rulebook, has even more terrain, and has more models for both sides that aren't in competition with the ones from Escape from San Canciano. We designed that deliberately so you could get the both.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because it's not a case of I feel like I have to choose which one do I want. It's like you say, if you want to just give it a try, there's an easy entry point and a very inexpensive entry point, but then you can kind of build out from there. And you kind of touched on the terrain in the boxes as well. It comes with some kind of foldable card terrain, and I think of pretty much of most of the games I've played, this is a game that really benefits from terrain. It grounds it in a realism, in a story, if you like, but also the amount of movement that you have in and around as well. So it's nice to see some terrain, even in that the kind of the cheaper of the 2 starter sets.
Yeah, we quite often say that Venice is like the third player of the game. It is a game set in Venice. Venice is, very classically, like, it's packed with buildings. That's sort of the point. They've got very little real estate space, but everything is packed up. And so you've got swimming in the canals, you can drown people, you can row gondolas, you can run along the sort of tightly packed streets, you can climb up to the top of any building and jump across things. You get bonuses for like sort of jumping on people from above, that sort of thing. Everything is multiple levels, and we knew that going in. It's a key element of the game, so putting the cardboard scenery in the boxes was a no-brainer for us. You need scenery to play. We're not going to pretend that like, oh, it's just a board. You do need scenery to play it, so here's some really affordable like scenery for you to get started. And if you want to upgrade, you can go to the MDF stuff, which we think looks really good. But you don't necessarily need it if you want to just sort of just start playing with a few gangs. Yeah,
I was just going to come on to the MDF stuff. I mean, it's kind of a bit of a match made in heaven, the fact that you guys kind of make the scenery, you make the terrain as well as the game, because I guess it's sort of game set in Venice or a little bit sort of few and far between. So in order to kind of get the amount of stuff out there that you've produced, honestly, whenever I see those tables set up, it instantly makes me want to kind of like, oh yeah, I can see why I want to play this. It looks fantastic.
It's quite a niche sort of setting for the scenery, but we've had a lot of people use the scenery for loads of other things as well, because like it's a historical setting, so you can use it for historical games. But we've also seen, we saw someone emailed in some photos a while back of, they took all the Streets of Venice stuff and sort of covered it in greenery and ferns and things and used it for a Naboo board for their Star Wars games, which was really, really cool to look at, and sort of had the sort of the verdigris sort of roofs and stuff that you'd appreciate. It's really, really cool. Yeah,
it's the kind of thing that you wouldn't necessarily think if you were a company just making terrain. It's not the setting setting you would instantly think of, but once you see it, it instantly triggers. Well, I could use that in this game. I could use it in that game. Like even myself, absolutely. Like I play a bit of Malifaux, and I'm thinking, I can see settings kind of set in that world and things like that. So yeah, I'd be interested to see that Star Wars. I'm going to have to try and dig that out somewhere now. So what's the future for Carnivale? Because I know that when I saw a few bits in the cabinet at UK Games Expo, they were for an upcoming sort of campaign expansion. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, we've been working on this book called Blood on the Water, which is the first campaign expansion for Carnivale. So like I say, with the rulebook, it starts in 1793 and then ends in 1795, sort of as present day. And then Blood on the Water is all of 1795. The narrative's moving onwards an entire year, and we're seeing what happens with all the different factions within that time. And it's something we've been working on for a little while. There's loads and loads of new characters coming, and the book sort of came about because we wanted to carry on the story, and we also wanted to make all these new characters and new models. And we've released some new characters since we launched the Kickstarter. There's a few characters that we brought in that are sort of fairly easy to explain. You're like, oh yeah, that's that guy, but he's got a sword. That makes sense to me. So we've got a sub-faction called the Pulcinellas, who are sort of crazy people with clubs. And we brought in a character called Pulcinella Brute, who's a bigger crazy person with a club, and the Pulcinella Fire Breather, who's someone who's crazy and instead breathes fire on people. And you're like, yeah, I get that. But then there's a bunch of new characters that we're working on at the moment that kind of don't make any sense unless you know the story behind them. So that's where Blood and Water sort of came through, and we're like, yeah, we've sort of reached the limit of what we want to do with the core ideas in the book, and we've got some breadcrumbs in the rule book of where the plot is going to go. We've got a lot of breadcrumbs, so you've got to sort of sift between them to see what we're going to do with it. But yeah, we're sort of expanding from there. So the book at the moment, we're on playtesting of scenarios. We've done basically all of the rules, which is really cool. The book, as it stands at the moment, we've still got a little while before we go to print. But as it stands at the moment, there's going to be quite a lot of new background written, which we got Gav Thorpe back to write some of again, which is really cool. Wow. And then going into the rules, there's a whole there's an updated version of the rule book in there. We had a few things where we started off going, okay, we've just got a couple of tweaks to the rules to make them a bit more sort of balanced, a bit more competitive, and we put those in now. We're like, we don't really like having the idea of you've got to have your core rule book with the core rules, and then you've got to have Blood in the Water with some tweaks to the rules, and you've got to swap between the pages every time you play, because that's sort of, again, anti what we're going with not having your eyes in the rule book the whole time. So we thought, you know what, we'll add a few more pages to the book, and now we've got the full sort of version of the rules in there with a few updates in there. And then there's also some advanced rules that we're putting in for Blood in the Water. One of which is we call it reactions. So one of the things we do in Carnivale is it's alternate activations, character to character. And when your opponent's activating, there's very little you can do to stop them. You've got sort of protection rolls and things like that, but that's about it. So we've added reactions to give you a bit of agency where your opponent's still playing. So you can do things like if they charge into you, then you can attempt a little quick strike before they try and hit you. And if they've only got like 1 or 2 life points left, it's very risky, but if you manage to pull it off, then you'll be all right. Or you can try and dodge, or you can try and withdraw after they've attacked and things like that. So yeah, we've got this whole new element. It's advanced rules. We're telling people straight up in the rulebook, do not play these rules unless you have played Carnivale before. So they add a bit more complexity, and we've added more scenery rules in there as well. There's things like zip wires that you can go down, so you go from the top to the bottom, counterweight lifts that you can run to and immediately ascend to the top of a building. We're also doing boats in there as well. So there's ships and scenery pieces and boats that you can get on and sail. And then we've got a whole load of new scenarios that play through the story of the book as well. So yeah, it's pretty jam-packed. It's going to be, I've been working quite hard recently on sort of laying the book out, and we've got all new art running through the entire thing. It looks absolutely beautiful, some of the new art we've put in. And yeah, it'll explain a lot of the new characters. There's some really, really weird things going on, which I'm not going to spoil. But we did, I think you said, we shared some of the new models at Games Expo, and we haven't shown any of them, but we've got probably about 2 years worth of releases from there with all new characters coming out for all of the factions.
It sounds an exciting time for the game, and I think it's as I said before, I think it's a great time to kind of like to dip in now with those starter sets, and with this on the horizon as well. You mentioned very briefly the art there as well. The art for this game is beautiful, And I think even if anybody's watching this video and even has a passing interest in it from what you were saying about the kind of the background to it, please kind of get yourself online, check it out, and have a look at just the art. As soon as you see the art and you see the kind of the terrain and everything else online, you'll be pulled in to have a look at it. So yeah, definitely go and check it all out.
There's a beautiful piece of art which is the homepage of the Carnevale website, which is carnivalegame.com. And it's just I commissioned this piece, and it's a triptych of 3 sort of fights going on throughout over the Rialto Bridge between the Rashar and the Patricians. And taken individually, they're nice pieces of art, but they flow together into this massive banner. And we're like, we love this piece. Let's just front page of the website. It's fantastic. Yeah, it's a really, really lovely piece. And if you want to know what Carnivale is about, you just look at that and you go, oh, okay. It's nobles in masks and ball gowns fighting fish monsters from the depths. Like, okay, yeah, fine. That's the game.
That's it in a nutshell, isn't it? Yeah, you just kind of sold it there. I mean, you mentioned carnivale.com. Where's the best place to if you want to know more, where's the best place to go and check it out?
Carnivalegame.com contains it's got, we're going through an update of it at the moment. There's still loads of stuff in there. There's information on the game. There's videos of us playing the game to get you started and see what it's all about. There's information on the factions. There's also a gang builder there as well. All of the stat cards for the gangs and the characters are online. We don't have any printed. You get a few little fast play sheets in the starter set, so you can get thanks straight away. But all of the other characters are online digital only, which means we can carry on providing updates for them as we go. Which have been really great. The community for Carnivale is fantastic. There's a community fan page on Facebook called, I think it's called Carnivale Miniature Game Fan Page, which is nice and easy. And everyone in there is super welcoming, and they'll give you advice on getting started, exactly all the links you need to go to follow. There's a few different things to check out as well. There's a wiki that's fan run, which is fantastic. There's a podcast as well called Monsters Behind the Masks, which 2 of our fans run, which is brilliant. It's really good. One of the presenters lives in Venice as well, so he's got all these ancient Venetian facts. He'd be like, actually, that one's based on real life, and I'm like, yeah, all the research that I've done is worthwhile.
Oh, that's brilliant. I'll have to check. I didn't realize it was a podcast. I'll have to check that one out. I do listen to a lot of podcasts, so I will definitely be checking that one. Lewis, I won't keep you too much longer. Thank you so much for your time today. I've really appreciated it. Hopefully we can have a chat again in the future after your expansion comes out, and we'll certainly see more of Carnivale on this channel. So thanks everyone for watching.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Lewis. See you all in the next video. Thanks for watching my video. I hope that you really enjoyed it. And if you did, why not consider clicking on the suggested video below to see more of the work that I've done. If you'd like to support the long-term sustainability of this channel, why not consider checking out my Patreon, where you can pledge and support from as little as $2 a month. And there is lots of different tiers and bonuses, which will give you access to a private Discord server. It will give you free t-shirts, free mugs, a podcast every month, and a number of other things, including getting your name at the end of every video, like these awesome folks who already support me now.